Welcome to episode 10 of Rise of a Nation, South America. This episode is about Argentina.
So, how does a nation actually build its identity, especially when you're talking about centuries of really profound change, from colonial rule through independence, internal wars, even major international conflicts? That's really the big question we're digging into today.
It's a massive question.
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of source material, articles, historical accounts, sometimes even, like today, declassified documents, and we really try to pull out the key insights, the surprising bits. We want to give you a shortcut to feeling truly informed. And today we are taking a deep dive into the incredibly complex history of Argentina. We're going chronologically, starting with the Spanish colonial roots, the fight for independence.
In those really formative civil conflicts that followed.
Exactly. And then moving into the darker period, the Dirty War, dictatorship, and finishing up with the Falklands War, which, massively reshaped how Argentina sees itself today.
It's quite a journey. And it's not just a list of dates. It's about understanding how all these forces, internal and external, kind of weave together to shape, the soul of a nation. To get Argentina today, you really have to trace these threads back.
Absolutely. So, let's start right at the beginning. Spanish colonization. We're talking basically the 15th to the 19th century. Spain was the power in the territories that would eventually become Argentina.
Right. They set up everything. The whole colonial administration, religious structures, government, trade, the works. They laid the foundation.
And as they did that, something really interesting happened with the population, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. Over generations, you get this substantial Criollo population growing. These are people of Spanish descent, but born in the Americas.
Yeah.
And crucially for Argentina, there was a lot of intermixing with the indigenous Amerindian populations, creating the Mestizo group, and also with the enslaved sub-Saharan African population, which led to the mulattoes. This blend is fundamental. It's why so many Argentines today identify as Criollos or Castizos. It points to this really distinct cultural mix right from the start.
That mix really sets the scene for, a pretty dramatic break, doesn't it? July 9th, 1816, Buenos Aires, the precursor to Argentina, declares independence from Spain.
A huge moment. And it wasn't just political, like you said. It was the birth of a new identity, trying to find its place on the world stage.
And they moved fast on that front, didn't they, seeking recognition?
Remarkably fast. Think about it. Just 7 years later, 1823, the United States formally recognizes the government of Buenos Aires. They even appoint Caesar Rodney as their first minister plenipotentiary.
Wow, that quick.
Yeah, and formal diplomatic relations established later that same year. Getting that early recognition, especially from a power like the U.S., was incredibly important, sort of validated them, even while they were facing these huge internal struggles trying to actually unify the country.
Right, because independence didn't mean instant peace or unity. Far from it.
Not at all. What followed was, frankly, a chaotic period. Lots of internal conflict, fragmentation. The Argentine Confederation actually collapsed. It was a really tumultuous time, with completely different ideas about what the country should even look like, clashing violently.
So this is where the Unionists versus Federalists conflict comes in.
Exactly. That's the core struggle of that post-independence era. You had the Unionists, who wanted a strong central government, likely based in Buenos Aires, and the Federalists, pushing for more power for the individual provinces, more regional autonomy. Our sources don't detail every single battle of that civil war, but the fact that the U.S. legation eventually returned to Buenos Aires in 1862, that happens after the country reunified as the Argentine Republic.
Okay. So the reestablishment of ties signals the end of that major conflict.
Pretty much. It underscores that, eventually, a unified vision for the Argentine Republic won out over the looser confederation idea. But it shows just how contested the very definition of the nation was, even long after breaking from Spain.
So the nation finds a form of unity, but then, decades later, it descends into one of its absolute darkest chapters, the Dirty War, the Guerra Sucia.
Yes, a truly chilling period. That's the name the military junta itself used for its campaign of state terrorism, running roughly from 1974 to 1983.
And this was orchestrated by the government.
By the government's own military and security forces. And often they worked with these paramilitary death squads, like the infamous Argentine Anti-Communist Alliance, the AAA.
Who are they targeting?
It was broad, terrifyingly so. Political dissidents, obviously.
Yeah.
But also anyone just believed to be linked with socialism or left-wing Peronism or the Montoneros guerrilla movement. This often included young professionals, high school and college students, trade union members, basically anyone active in political organizations that the regime opposed.
And the methods, they were brutal.
Beyond brutal. We're talking systematic arrest, torture, killings, and the forced disappearances of thousands upon thousands. The estimates vary, but they hover around 22,000 to 30,000 people.
Disappeared. Just gone.
Gone. One Navy captain, Adolfo Scilingo, later confessed. His words are chilling. He said the Argentine military did worse things than the Nazis. He detailed the death flights, where victims were drugged, put on planes, and thrown alive into the South Atlantic.
Unbelievable.
And besides the killings and disappearances, there was this network of around 340 secret concentration camps. About 12,000 people were held in these camps, completely outside any legal process, tortured, interrogated.
How did it get to this point? What's the context here with Peronism?
Well, you have to understand the military's long-standing opposition to Juan Perón and his populist movement. They'd actually outlawed Peronism back in 1955. This created decades of simmering Peronist resistance, including some guerrilla groups emerging in the 60s. Then Perón returns from exile in 1973. But he's older, and he actually shifts towards the right-wing faction within his own movement. It creates a really volatile situation. He dies in 74, and his successor is his third wife, Isabel Perón, who had been vice president.
And things escalated under her.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Even before the final military coup in 76, her government saw a huge spike in violence. Hundreds of assassinations between 73 and 75, mostly carried out by those paramilitary groups, especially the AAA, which was run by a close associate of hers, José López Rega. Trade unionists were heavily targeted.
And there was corporate involvement, too.
Yes, disturbingly so. Declassified information points to major companies, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Essendar, Dami and Siderca being complicit. In some cases, union representatives were kidnapped right from the factory floor. Some were allegedly tortured on company property or in detention centers linked to the companies. The Papal Prensa case is particularly stark. The owner, Lydia Papaleo, testified she was forced to sell her shares to major newspaper conglomerates under direct threat. She said they told her, "Sign, or it will cost you your daughter's life and your own."
That's horrifying. The level of collusion.
It speaks to the pervasive nature of the terror, and the legacy that desaparecidos that disappeared is still so raw in Argentina. You have groups like the Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo.
The abuelas, yes.
Exactly, the abuelas. Founded in 77, searching relentlessly for an estimated 500 children who were kidnapped, often born to mothers in captivity, then given to families connected to the regime. They've managed to locate 102 of them so far. An incredible, painstaking effort.
And the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo with their silent protests?
Week after week, for over 30 years, demanding answers. Their courage, alongside activists like Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, who himself was tortured and won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1980 for his human rights work. It's just immense.
And then there's the international dimension. The U.S. involvement is pretty stark when you look at the documents.
It is. There was secret backing for the junta, significant military aid, around $50 million. Henry Kissinger's infamous comments congratulating the junta for, quote, wiping out terrorist forces, effectively gave them a green light for these brutal policies.
And the School of the Americas.
Yes, the U.S. Army School of the Americas trained many Latin American military officers, and the curriculum included counterinsurgency tactics, intelligence gathering, and, yes, interrogation techniques that amounted to torture.
So, U.S. backing. What about other countries?
France also played a role. There was a permanent French military mission stationed in Argentina from 1959 right up until 1981. These were veterans of the Algerian War.
Bringing their counterinsurgency experience.
The implication is strong. It suggests a transfer of what some call state terrorism tactics, methods honed in Algeria, being taught and applied in Argentina. This international network, both the overt aid and the covert training and encouragement, was crucial in enabling the regime's reign of terror.
It really makes you ask, how does a country even begin to process that kind of history? The impact on the national psyche must be profound.
Absolutely. And how does that legacy shape institutions, trust in government, everything, for generations to come? It's a deep, deep wound.
From that darkness, we shift to another major event, a conflict this time, that also profoundly shaped Argentina. The Falklands War, or the Malvinas War in 1982.
Right. And this conflict revolves around Argentina's deeply held, long-standing claim to the Falkland Islands, which they call the Malvinas. It's often described in Argentina as a historic injustice, an open wound.
This wasn't a new issue in 82, though.
Oh, not at all. Decades old. The UN had called for a negotiated settlement back in 1965. The UK had even, at various points, looked into ways to maybe reduce the cost of the islands or link them more closely with Argentina economically, like a 1971 agreement, giving the Argentine state oil company a monopoly there.
But diplomacy just didn't work.
Fundamentally, no. You had the islanders consistently wanting to remain British, and Argentina absolutely refusing to drop its sovereignty claim. It was an impasse. And by 1982, the Argentine military junta was in deep trouble.
Because of the dirty war fallout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The economy was stagnating terribly, and there was massive public unrest simmering over the human rights abuses. The junta was desperate. Admiral Jorge Anaya, he was the main proponent of a military solution for the Falklands Malvinas.
A gamble,
A
basically.
huge gamble. They thought invading the islands would divert public attention, whip up nationalist sentiment, and shore up their own crumbling legitimacy. And crucially, they seemed to genuinely believe the British wouldn't mount a significant military response.
Which turned out to be a massive miscalculation.
A fatal one. It started small. Some Argentine scrap metal workers landing on South Georgia Island in March '82, raising an Argentine flag. The initial British reaction was seen by the Argentines as weak. So, on April 2nd, they launched a full-scale invasion of the main Falkland Islands.
And the British defense was minimal at first.
Very small.
Yeah.
Just about 40 Royal Marines. Their goal wasn't really to stop the invasion force, but more to, as they put it, give the Argentinians a bloody nose, make a stand, show resistance for the world to see.
How did the world react? The U.S.?
The U.S. tried shuttle diplomacy initially, Alexander Haig flying back and forth.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they sided firmly with their longtime ally, the UK. And their support was critical.
Material support.
Oh, yeah. Hundreds of advanced missiles, sidewinders, harpoons,
Yeah.
intelligence sharing, satellite imagery, weather data. They even diverted fuel tankers and apparently had an amphibious assault ship, the USS Graham, ready to lend if the British lost an aircraft carrier. It was significant.
What about other neighbors? Chile.
Chile's role was fascinating. They feared Argentina might try similar tactics against them over the disputed Beagle Channel Islands. So they refused to back Argentina. Instead, they secretly provided vital intelligence to the British, like early warnings about Argentine air sorties.
That must have hampered the Argentine effort.
Definitely. It forced Argentina to keep some of their best mountain troops stationed near the Chilean border, just in case. They couldn't fully commit all their forces to the Falklands. Other countries were involved too. Peru sent aid to Argentina. Spain stopped an Argentine sabotage plot in Gibraltar. It really became a global issue.
And the fighting itself was intense.
Extremely. Early on, the Argentine submarine Santa Fe was put out of action. Then the British destroyer HMS Sheffield was hit by an Exocet missile, a huge shock. But maybe the most defining naval moment was the sinking of the Argentine cruiser, the General Belgrano, by a British submarine, HMS Conqueror.
That was controversial, wasn't it?
Hugely controversial, because it was outside the declared exclusion zone. But it had a decisive military impact. The Argentine surface fleet basically retreated to port after that and stayed there. The air war was brutal too. Argentina's pilots flew bravely right at the edge of their range and inflicted real damage on the British fleet.
Then came the ground war.
Right. British forces landed at San Carlos Bay, establishing a beachhead. Then came really tough battles like Goose Green, very fierce fighting, heavy casualties on both sides, ending in a British victory and the capture of nearly 1,000 Argentines.
But the British took hits too.
Absolutely. The air attacks at Bluff Cove were devastating, particularly for the Welsh Guards on board the RFA Sir Galahad. Then the final push involved capturing the high ground around the capital, Stanley battles for places like Mount Tumbledown and Wireless Ridge.
Yeah.
Really gritty, close quarters fighting.
Until the surrender.
Until June 14th, 1982. Brigadier Julian Thompson, representing the British Land Forces initially, negotiated the terms in Stanley with the Argentine commander, General Menendez, and then Major General Jeremy Moore formally accepted the surrender.
The media portrayal sounds like it was night and day between the two countries.
Completely different world. In Argentina, the state-controlled media was putting out fake photos, headlines screaming, "Estamos ganando, we're winning!" Even respected figures like the writer Ernesto Sabato initially supported the war, seeing it as unifying.
And in the UK.
The BBC tried to maintain neutrality, which actually caused some controversy at home. But the tabloid press, especially The Sun, with its infamous gotcha headline after the Belgrano sinking, was incredibly jingoistic. It really showed the power of media in shaping public mood during wartime.
Culturally, the war left a mark too.
Definitely. In Britain, words like yomp, the Marines' term for marching with heavy gear, and exocet became household words. In Argentina, something interesting happened. The junta banned English language music during the war. Yeah. And that actually gave a huge boost to local Argentine rock musicians who suddenly got massive airplay. It inadvertently strengthened a part of their own national culture. And you had figures like Jorge Luis Borges, the famous Argentine writer, calling the whole thing a fight between two bald men over a comb, capturing that sense of maybe absurdity alongside the tragedy.
It really is incredible how such a short war, just 74 days, could have such massive, long-lasting consequences for both nations.
Absolutely. The human cost alone, 649 Argentine military personnel killed, 255 British, plus 3 civilian islanders. And even the return home was different. British troops got a hero's welcome. Argentine soldiers, many of them young conscripts, often faced a difficult, sometimes silent or even hostile reception back home, blamed for the defeat.
And the political fallout was immense.
Immediate and game-changing. In the UK, Margaret Thatcher's popularity soared. The victory cemented her image, helped her win a landslide election the next year, and ended debates about cutting the Royal Navy.
While in Argentina,
The exact opposite. The defeat was humiliating. It directly led to the collapse of the military junta. President Galtieri was ousted almost immediately, and it paved the way for the return of democracy in 1983, the first free election since '73. The military's prestige, its image as the protector of the nation, was utterly destroyed.
but diplomatic ties took longer to fix.
Much longer. Formal relations between Argentina and the UK weren't restored until 1990.
And the core issue, the sovereignty claim, it didn't go away for Argentina.
Not at all. In fact, Argentina's claim to the Malvinas was actually written into its national constitution in 1994. It remains a fundamental, unresolved issue in Argentine foreign policy, and the Falkland Islands government continues to accuse Argentina of trying to obstruct its economic development.
Have there been any moves toward reconciliation since then?
There have been efforts. Important humanitarian work, for example, collaborating with the Red Cross to identify the remains of Argentine soldiers buried on the islands. Symbolic gestures, too, like artists creating roses from melted-down bullet casings. Small steps, perhaps, but significant.
But the fundamental position of the islanders hasn't changed.
If anything, it's solidified. The population on the Falklands has actually doubled since 1982. It's more diverse now, over 40 nationalities represented. And in the most recent referendum on status, 99.8% voted to remain a British overseas territory. Their right to self-determination is the absolute cornerstone of the UK's position.
Wow. So we've covered a huge sweep of history today, from Spanish rule and the fight for independence, through those internal conflicts, the darkness of the Dirty War, and then the Falklands conflict. It's clear each of these periods deeply impacted Argentina's identity.
Definitely. You see how internal struggles, external pressures, the search for national unity, they all just constantly interact and reshape the country. Hopefully you, the listener, now have a clearer sense of these key moments that forged modern Argentina.
It leaves you with a final thought, though. You know, in a world where national identity so often gets tangled up with historical grievances, especially territorial ones, what does it really mean for a nation to try and move forward when it simultaneously embeds a claim born from conflict right into its constitution?
That's a powerful question. How does a country reconcile a painful past, including conflicts and unresolved claims, with its hopes for the future? And what responsibility do nations have for the legacies of these conflicts, legacies that clearly still echo today?
Something to think about. And of course, if you want to go even deeper on any of this, the sources we've drawn on today offer a lot more detail for your own deep dive.
Thank you for watching episode 10 of Rise of a Nation, South America. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe for more. Write in the comments which country's rise you would like me to cover next.